Some of our listeners on our YouTube channel or students who visited once or sometime the Abbey in the recent years or longer told us that actually monastics should not speak about politics. So our teacher, Venerable Chödrön, for example, all these years has spoken quite openly about societal and political issues, explaining to our students how to understand certain developments and from the perspective of Buddhism, especially from the ethical perspective. She has given us clear views, so we felt supported in our struggles to understand and respond to political or environmental challenges, to mention just some. And I feel really strongly that monastics should express what they have to share. Everybody has the right of free speech. Even the Buddha himself, he gave some arguments about societal issues. For example, at his time in 480 to 400 BCE, there existed caste systems: the Brahmins, the royalty, the traders, and the laborers. The Buddha argued that these castes were humanly created fiction. This very much can be applied to the situation of today's life as well. The differentiation of the value of human beings according to their race is not more than a humanly created fiction. The caste system of ancient India was an unjust system that led to great prejudice and violence. So does the racial discrimination now. The Buddha himself, as a young man, as so many of us now, lived in privilege. As a royal, the Buddha experienced immense power, wealth, and privilege. He was a prince, but he gave it all up to change his mind and to disrupt the caste system. As Mingyu Rinpoche just stated this morning, when the Buddha formed his own community, he upended the age-old traditions of caste system and allowed people from all walks of life into the Sangha. It was not perfect. Women were not afforded the same status as men. But it was a revolution at that time. He did not simply pray for the suffering of the caste system to end. He used the power he had to actively change the system of his day that were causing so many people to suffer. So this is a background that monastics are not just limited to prayer and meditation. We can and shall do more. I personally find it very important to be active, to speak with the means we have in a non-violent way. We have to support each other to overcome the hardships we face. And we live together as one part of society on this planet, in this country. We are dependent on each other. So the suffering of one person affects us all, as we see now. I grew up in East Germany. I faced oppression in a variety of ways. For example, I lived in a dictatorial system myself for a huge part of my childhood, but also had the opportunity to learn later the value of freedom, of free speech, of nonviolent activism, as you all know, when East German citizens rose up in autumn 1989 with a peaceful revolution. More than 500,000 people alone in Berlin marched on the streets, and tens of thousands in other East German cities, what greatly outnumbered the security forces, and led finally to a reunification of Germany. But every family in Germany has also been greatly affected, directly or indirectly, by what happened in the Second World War. My grandfather was in a concentration camp. My grandmother lived through the war, and my father was a young adult to supply his mother and other families with water and food, while they remained for days and weeks on end for many years in cellars beneath huge buildings to hide for falling bombs. And school had many years of education in all facets of the Second World War, from the socialist communist perspective as well as later socialist democratic perspective in Germany, United Germany. But what it all boils down is that terrorism, war, anti-Semitism shall never occur again. I was as little as 7 or 8 years old when I first saw a concentration camp. And from then on, every year, our school went to the concentration camps to remind us again and again about the cruelty of that time, so it will never occur again. We also learned how important it is to speak up, what unfortunately hasn't occurred sufficiently enough in Germany before and during the era of Adolf Hitler. Because people looked away, feared the consequences because of danger that it would risk their lives, or because they just have been ignorant. But there were some we recognized today as heroes, such as the White Rose movement in south of Germany. They were active during the period of 42 and 43, while most Germans kept silence during the Nazi regime. There were these students at the Maximilian University in Munich who resisted the system. There were only 20 to 40 young students among 8,000 students who spoke up. Sophia and Hans Scholl, some of you may know, they were siblings and headed this movement. And they wrote thousands of pamphlets against the Nazi regime that publicly denounced the murder of the Jews. They asked the youth to unite in opposition against Hitler. But unfortunately, during the campaign, one of the campaigns, they distributed pamphlets against the Nazi regime and got caught by the Nazis, and some days later decapitated. They were only 22 and 24 years old. The White Rose is an excellent and a rare example for the civil resistance against the NS regime in Germany. So what's the message of the White Rose for all us now? That there must always be people who feel jointly responsible for the fact that our freedom is never endangered again. That is the message that these young people have left. And they should be role models. Even in everyday situations, don't look away when Afro-Americans are attacked or even killed. Stand up against right-wing extremism. And we have to have courage to stand up, to speak up for civil rights, for ethical standards. Martin Niemöller was a prominent Lutheran pastor in Germany. He emerged as an outspoken public opponent of Adolf Hitler and spent later 7 years of the Nazi regime in a concentration camp. He is perhaps the best remembered for his post-war words that speaks well for what we should stand up against. He said, "First they came for the socialist, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionist, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me." We should not let comments so far. There are indicators that already, for example, free journalism press in the US has been dismissed in the last few days. It has been reported by advocacy NGOs that just in the last 3-4 days, they investigated over 100 instances of attacks against press. The majority of those attacks have been from police. At least 19 reporters have been arrested. 36 journalists have said that they were shot by police with projectiles such as rubber bullets, and 76 have reported assaults. Please not let us be silent in times of crime, of injustice, of cruelty of all kinds. Let's speak up and take action now.